Somewhere off the coast of Kenya, an elephant sculpture once stood in front of Pope Francis during his 2015 visit to the country. It wasn't carved from wood, it wasn't cast in bronze, it was built from flip-flops, thousands of them, washed up on Kenyan beaches, collected by hand, cut into pieces, glued in layers, and carved by artisans who used to work in traditional wood carving before timber became too scarce to rely on. That sculpture came from a company called Ocean Soul. Since it started, the organization has pulled approximately 10 million flip-flops out of beaches, drains, and dump sites across Kenya, material that would otherwise take decades, sometimes more than a century, to break down on its own. And in Nairobi, a completely different kind of waste is going through a similarly unlikely transformation. Old newspapers, rolled around graphite cores, pressed into shape, dried in the sun, and turned into pencils that are now reaching children in classrooms across the country. Two materials nobody wanted. Two businesses that figured out what to do with them. This is the story of how that happened, and whether small models like these can actually move the needle on a waste crisis this large. If you think waste is just something to be disposed of, subscribe and stay here, because what Kenya is doing with it might change how you see your own trash. Kenya generates approximately 22,000 tons of waste every day, close to 8 million tonnes annually. Roughly 40% of that comes from urban areas. In Nairobi alone, daily waste generation runs between 2,400 and 2,500 tons, of which approximately 20% is plastic. Not all of that waste gets collected or sorted properly. A significant share ends up at overloaded sites like Dandora Dump, which still receives around 2,000 tons per day, creating sustained pressure on public health, groundwater, and the surrounding urban environment. Within that pressure though, specific waste streams have found unexpected second lives. Two materials, in particular flip-flops and newspaper, show how a single type of waste, treated as a raw material rather than garbage, can support both environmental cleanup and local employment. Flip-flops are popular across Kenya for obvious reasons: cheap, lightweight, easy to wash, and well suited to hot climates, dusty roads, and the sand and mud common in many lower income communities. Globally, more than 1 billion pairs are manufactured every year. In 2024, Kenya alone imported more than 183,000 pairs under the rubber and plastic sandal category, not counting domestic production and trade. At roughly $1 or less per pair, the economics of replacement are simple. When a strap breaks or a sole cracks under sun exposure, people don't repair them. They buy new ones. Globally, an estimated 200 million pairs are discarded every year. Because they're made from synthetic rubber, plastic, and foam, flip-flops can take decades to over a century to break down naturally. In Kenya, discarded pairs drift from residential areas into drains and rivers, and eventually wash up along beaches on the Indian Ocean coastline. That drift is exactly where Ocean Soul's story begins. In 1997, conservationist Julie Church was working along the Kenyan coast and noticed something specific among the discarded flip-flops piling up on the beaches. Local children were already using the broken sandals to make their own toys. If children could turn flip-flops into toys, she reasoned, adults could turn them into something with commercial and artistic value. That observation became Ocean Soul, a model combining beach cleanup, local employment, and handmade art production. The company built a network of collectors who participate in weekly beach cleanups along the Kenyan coast, paying approximately 30 US cents per kilogram of collected flip-flops. It's not a large sum, but it changes the basic economics of cleanup. Waste that has cash value gets picked up before the tide carries it further out. Collection groups bring in roughly 1 ton of flip-flops per week, equivalent to more than 3,000 individual sandals. At the Nairobi workshop, the material goes through a defined process. Flip-flops are washed by hand with water, and detergent drying takes only 2 to 3 hours thanks to Kenya's climate. Artisans then sort by color and thickness, since a single flip-flop is far too thin to carve directly. Pieces are cut to template and glued in layers using non-toxic adhesive, building up enough material thickness before any carving begins. To make an elephant, artisans first build separate blocks for the body, head, ears, legs, and trunk before picking up a knife. For a whale, they calculate the curve of the back, fins, tail, and belly before shaping anything. Many of Ocean Soul's artisans previously worked in Kenya's traditional woodcarving trade, a craft that lost much of its raw material access after logging restrictions reduced wood supply. The tools transferred directly. The material changed completely, softer, more colourful, and without the splinter risk of timber. Large pieces can take up to 3 months to complete, almost entirely by hand. One such project, a full-size car built for a dealership in Alabama, United States used approximately 4,500 flip-flops and took 3 to 4 months. Ocean Soul's product range spans from small elephant sculptures around $26 to large pieces exceeding $570, with some giraffe models reaching $1,200 depending on size and complexity. Marine animals like turtles and whales connect directly to the ocean conservation message. Safari animals like elephants and giraffes remain the strongest sellers, tied closely to how international tourists picture Kenya. Flip-flops weren't the only material Kenyan entrepreneurs found value in. Paper makes up a substantial portion of urban waste globally, among the largest material categories after organic waste and plastic. In Nairobi, studies on waste composition suggest paper accounts for roughly 11 to 12% of household urban waste, within a daily total of 2,400 to 2,500 tons. When paper decomposes in landfill conditions, oxygen-poor environments, where organic breakdown happens differently than in open air, it generates methane, a greenhouse gas with significant short-term warming impact. Printed newspapers remain genuinely important in Kenya, where reliable internet access isn't universal. That means a steady volume of newspapers gets read once and then discarded. Two brothers founded Momo Pencils specifically to intercept that waste stream, replacing the wood typically used in pencil manufacturing with rolled newspaper, turning a flat newspaper sheet into something hard enough to function as a pencil, comfortable to hold, and durable enough to sell. Required developing a multi-stage manufacturing process from scratch. A double-page newspaper spread yields approximately 3 pencils. The full production process runs through roughly 9 stages. Newspapers are cut to size first. The offcuts aren't discarded, they're repurposed as filler material between the rolled paper layers and the graphite core, minimizing waste even within the production process itself. The graphite core is the only input the company doesn't source locally. Workers position the core on the cut newspaper, apply wood glue, and pass the assembly through a rolling machine. The glue does specific work here, bonding paper layers tightly together, hardening the pencil body, and producing a feel close to actual wood. Getting the glue quantity right requires real skill too much, and drying time stretches out too little, and the pencil body lacks structural strength. After rolling, the pencil tubes are dried in direct sunlight, taking advantage of Kenya's climate rather than requiring industrial drying equipment. Momo Pencils began in 2017, producing approximately 500 pencils per day. With selective automation of certain stages, current capacity has scaled up to as much as 100,000 pencils per day. If this kind of grassroots problem solving is what you're here for, share this video, because the social impact side of this story is just as significant as the recycling. Momo's pencils cost roughly 3 times more than standard pencils, most of which Kenya imports cheaply from China. That price gap is the company's core commercial challenge. A shop owner stocking shelves has little incentive to carry a pencil that costs triple the price of the alternative, regardless of its environmental story. The biggest driver of that cost is wages. Momo Pencils pays workers approximately $15 per day, significantly above Kenya's minimum wage. That choice limits how cheaply the product can be sold, but it also produces a direct social outcome: better compensated local employment built around a recycling process. Given the price gap, Momo Pencils has focused on specific customer segments, businesses, schools, and organizations that place explicit value on environmentally conscious, Kenyan-made products rather than competing purely on shelf price against imported alternatives. The company has donated more than 50,000 pencils so far, with a long-term goal of reaching 1 million children. In many Kenyan classrooms with around 60 students, writing materials are not guaranteed for every child. Sometimes half a class has pencils, while the other half doesn't. turning something as basic as writing practice into an actual barrier to learning. Momo Pencil's school visits typically include planting tree seedlings alongside students, more than 10,000 trees planted to date through these visits. The pencil itself becomes one link in a longer chain, newspapers diverted from landfill, workers paid above minimum wage, students given material to write with, and a tree placed in the ground on the same visit. Ocean Soul has received inquiries from India, Indonesia, and Brazil countries dealing with comparable flip-flop waste volumes along their own coastlines. That interest suggests the underlying model isn't uniquely tied to Kenya's specific conditions. The broader lesson isn't that every recycling model can be copied directly. Labor costs, waste composition, and local markets all differ by region. It's that the approach itself is transferable. Identify the waste type that's most abundant locally, then find or build a product market that can absorb it consistently. That's the mechanism that makes collection sustainable long-term. Waste with a buyer gets picked up. Waste without one gets left for the tide, or buried, or burned. A flip-flop left on a beach is just slow decomposing plastic. Washed, collected, and brought into Ocean Soul's workshop, it becomes part of a sculpture that ends up in front of a head of state or in a home thousands of kilometers away. A newspaper left in a landfill produces methane as it decomposes. Cut, rolled around graphite, and dried in the sun, it becomes the pencil a child uses to learn to write. Neither material changed. What changed was whether anyone built a system to catch it before it became permanent waste. That's the whole model, and it's working in two completely different corners of Kenya's waste stream at once.